Welcome to AP Art History Recording Studios in St. Paul, Minnesota. It's late in the afternoon. I'm ready to go. This should be short. Cross your fingers. This is going to be starting from the beginning and going through, I think, Egyptian. Yeah. So this is the 250. This is going to be on the exam, on the national exam on May 15th, 11 o'clock, I believe. So let's get going. Okay, so I have a major issue with this work because it's called the Apollo Stone, because something about how it was found during Apollo 11. Well, so what? The people that made it didn't know anything about the Apollo 11. So, anyways, okay, so we're going back quite a ways to 25,000 to 25, yeah, about 25,000 BCE, before the Common Era. Let's not be Christian centric and call it BC, before Christ. Um, and already this is outdated because they've already found works that are older than this. But this is what they put on the test in 2016, so we're kind of stuck with it. It is considered to be the oldest figurative work on the African continent, found in present-day Namibia, which is one of the last countries to get its independence, and it's in southwest Africa. And I guess it's kind of cool to look at something going that far back with figures on it. And you're going to, I mean, I always do when I look at this stuff, I get kind of tingly because, wow, so it's just a part of us as humans to make images, going way, way back. Now, they found a 100,000-year-old paint workshop on the southern coast of Africa, and it seems like, and we've talked about this in class before, it seems like every 2 or 3 months there's a new discovery of something that looks like art from way, way, way back. Okay, so that's the Apollo Stone. Now, when you think about the Paleolithic period, which is basically 40,000 to 8,000, but of course that date is being nudged up all the time. The Paleolithic period, we usually think about the Great Hall of the Bulls in Luxor, France, 15,000 to 13,000 years old. I think I had this as a question about whether or not this is art by metamorphosis. And some of you either had learned a lot about this cave or looked it up or something. So you guys are all fairly familiar with it. There was a lot of theories out there. One was that it was some sort of shamanistic practice, that they would paint the animals on the walls and then go out and hunt them, and it would give them more power over the animals. But then they looked at the animal remains in the caves and discovered that they were all much smaller animals. It's basically, guys, we'll never know. Because there was no written language in the Paleolithic period. So we'll never know why they put these images up on the cave walls. One thing that's kind of interesting is there's not, if I remember right, in Luxor, I don't think there's one single human figure. Oftentimes you'll see the outlines of hands, but not an actual human figure. And in your textbook, it talks about how they would sometimes put the organic substance in their mouths and spew it out to make some of the images. So that's kind of fun to think about. Okay, the next one, I had never seen this until it became one of the 250. And it's a camelid sacrum in the shape of a canine. And it's from central Mexico, so it's 14,000 to 7,000 BCE. And what happened was they basically took a part of a backbone of a kind of camel-like animal, and then made it look as though it was the head of an animal. And so there you go. Um, so it's got to be fairly small. I mean, it looks like it's a huge sculpture, but obviously it's not. And so one of the things that they're trying to do with this 250 is they're trying to get away from just showing caves from Europe. They're trying to show you objects from other areas of the globe. And I actually like this one. I think it's a fascinating work. And you just kind of imagine, somebody back then just looking at that backbone and saying, "Hey, I could make an animal head out of this." Go figure. Okay, and then this is something else from Africa. This is Algeria. Algeria is in North Africa, Northwest Africa. It's a very large country. And it's a rock painting dating back to about 12,000 years. No, actually, it says 6,000 to 4,000 years. Sorry about that, guys. And it's beautiful. I have an online. I'll try and find it. There's an online video about African rock art, and it's just a really interesting topic. Okay, let's keep going. And then this one. So, how much is maybe the national AP exam political? And when I look at this, I think, yeah, it's probably a little political. Because this is from the Arabian Peninsula, I think present-day Saudi Arabia, and it goes back to 4000 BCE, and it's interesting because usually what we see out of the area we call the Middle East is Islamic art, and this is a stela or stele, and we're going to see a few of these in this lecture, and basically they are a horizontal, usually rock, usually marble, and they look like monuments, and you can see they're figurative, and gives you a sense of the early art coming out of that area of the world, which is a good thing, I think, to know about, actually. Okay, we're not really sure what role it played, because again, I don't think there's any written discussion of it. Okay, although we're now in the Neolithic period. Ba-boom! Sorry. Starting with the rock cliff, or the rock painting in Algeria. So Neolithic period is really interesting because a lot of things happen in that period, and I'll go through just a few of them. One, cities. People start to come together, and in order for there to be a city, you have to have architecture. And with architecture, you're probably going to have a hierarchy where somebody becomes the ruler and says, "You build that palace," or whatever it might be. And there's also differentiation of jobs. And I probably should have mentioned this as number 2 or 3. Agriculture. So no longer hunting and gathering. This is near and dear to my heart, being from Nebraska. People started to plant crops and feed themselves with that, and also animal husbandry. I don't know. I probably say animal husbandry once every year. The breeding of livestock. It sounds as if I'm a member of the Future Farmers of America, but I'm not. That's actually my son's nickname in high school in cross country. Okay, let's keep going. So you always got to, talk about China when you're talking about ancient art. And this is the Jade Kong. You probably know there is a long tradition of jade being used in Chinese art. And this one actually was probably used in some sort of ceremony. And it acted as, I guess, I don't know, a bell, a musical instrument, I guess, probably somewhere in there. Okay, so there you go with that one. And then Stonehenge. Did you ever think we were going to get to Stonehenge? I've seen various different documentaries. I've actually seen it. Very lucky enough in, what was it? The March of 1990. I popped up on the plateau and saw Stonehenge for the first time. You can't get near it anymore, which is kind of sad. Because, they don't want, I guess, handprints on Stonehenge. Um, is there a definitive understanding of what it was used for? I think so. I think it was used as a sundial. There's still a lot of talk, of course. There's no written account of how it was used. And here's a little fact you might not know. There's a lot of Stonehenges in England because henge means circle, so circle of stones. It just so happens that this is the most famous one. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting little factoid that you can impress people with tonight at dinner. There it is, Stonehenge, 2,500 to 1,600 BCE. Ooh, that's kind of a good picture right there. I used to have these old slides of Stonehenge with guys in groovy 1960s outfits and such, but this is better, I think. Carhenge, a very fun little tourist spot in Nebraska. It's cars on top of each other in the shape of Stonehenge, just in case you're looking for something to do this summer. All right, Stonehenge. I love this thing. I had never seen it before 2016. It comes from Papua New Guinea in the Pacific. And it's called an Amban stone. And where are we? Hold on a second. I gotta look at my notes. Yeah, so it's pretty rare. Found in a cave in the 1960s. And they believe it's probably some sort of mortar and pestle thing going on. Although it has a higher sculptural level than other pestles. And what animal is it? Ah, darn, I used to know this. Hold on a second. Despite the animalistic features, it's supposed to resemble a fruit bat. Oh, that's a good little thing. Or a spiny anteater. I'll go for either one. Yeah. So I always remember when I saw this the first time, I was like, oh, it's so cute. So cute. Okay, now we're heading to central Mexico. And this is a female figurine. And it's made of clay and has red, yellow, and black pigment. Again, they're trying to break out from sort of the old Western look at Paleolithic or Neolithic and looking more at some things around the globe. Okay, so this is a terracotta fragment from the Solomon Islands, again, back to the Pacific. And it refers to, Lapita refers to an ancient Pacific culture. What else? They believe that they probably are ancestors of people from Southeast Asia, which would make sense. But they came together as a people around 1500 BCE. And it's an example of carving, which is pretty interesting. Okay. Now let's go to stuff that your general ancient art history class would talk about. This is a white temple. It's a ziggurat from Iraq. And now we're getting into Near Eastern art, which most people believe is the founding of human civilization. And it's in between the two river valleys, the Tigris-Euphrates river valleys in present-day Iraq. And here we have evidence of a hierarchy. Somebody convinced some other people to make this ziggurat, this temple. Yeah, so we're going into this early time period of human civilization. And then here's what the ziggurat would have looked like when it was first done or first completed. Okay, this is one of my faves. I've always kind of liked this object. This is the palette of King Narmer. And so what we're going to see here, for the 250 at least, is an interweaving of Near Eastern art from Iraq and then Egyptian art. So, and it's all about the dates, people. So it's 3000 BCE. And believe it or not, this was used to hold makeup. On the right, see the animals with the long necks? Inside that circle would have been eye makeup that they would have put on their eyes for the sun, to block the sun a little bit, much like football players do today. And the whole thing has a lot of really interesting symbolism. But the most important prize symbolism is that this Narmer guy was the first person to unite Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. So that's one of the things that's going on here. And also, it's showing conquest for sure on the left side, as you see the person over him. Now, when they did their figures, let's see if I can get this right. So the legs are in profile. The torso is frontal. The upper body is in profile, and the head is frontal. Something like that. I used to have this question on one of the old study questions. What sport would the Egyptians been great at if they truly had bodies like they were represented? Also, with Egyptian art, you're going to see more important people are going to be larger, which makes sense. I mean, but they were kind of the first to do that. What else? Yeah, I think that's good. Yeah, Paula Narmer. And now we're going back to Iraq. And this is the Sumerian culture, and so was the White Temple and Ziggurat. And the Sumerians are seen as the first people to develop a writing system. It was called cuneiform, and they would take wet tablets of clay and use a stylus and make their markings, the cuneiform markings. A lot of the cuneiform tablets are boring. Except for, as we'll see probably on the EMAC next week, there was some other stuff going on, but a lot of it was just a counting of goods inside a temple and so on and so forth. And then these figures are always quite odd. They have very large eyes and were the main type of sculpture that you would see in the Sumerian culture. Okay, let's keep going. All right, so we know right away, you don't have to be any huge expert on Egyptian art to know this. We know right away that this scribe is of lower class standing than the Egyptian aristocracy because his body is not idealized. Only the very powerful in Egypt, had the flat stomachs and the great-looking abs and very good biceps and such. People that extra work out at Lifetime Fitness and such. And so this scribe, one of the reasons he's in here is because it's a great contrast to the aristocracy and how they were represented. Okay, and then we're back to Sumeria. I'm kind of getting a whiplash here between Egypt and Sumeria. So this is called the Standard of Ur, and it's about the size of a music blaster in the 1980s. And a couple of things here that are important. One is that for the first time, there's a ground line. So you have, for the first time in art, you have, hold on, I got to come up with a term. Okay, my brain went somewhere there. For the first time in art, you have registers. So you have narrative on each level, each of the three levels, because you finally decided to put, feet down on the ground line, which is kind of fun to think about. Also, you can see, especially at the top, the third figure over from the left is larger than everybody else, again showing who's the most powerful. Okay, I think we're almost done with the Sumerians. And yes, the blue is lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. So it would show that precious materials, you were able to hire, they wouldn't have probably called him an artist, maybe more of a craftsman or a craftswoman. You were able to have somebody with, fine skills and rich resources to create something for you, showing that there is a hierarchy. Whoops. Okay, hold on. Keep going. All right, now the pyramids! All right. I have never been. I don't know if I ever will. Will I ever get to Egypt? Probably not. I have a good friend that has. So here's the Great Pyramids of Menkaure, Khafre, and Khufu. And one of the things that I always think about, and it still is mind-boggling to me, and we've already kind of discussed, is like, man, those pharaohs must have had some power to convince people to day in and day out put stones on top of stones to create essentially a man-made mountain. We now know that it was not slaves. There's been some recent, I'd say in the last 20 years, some excavation of dwellings, breweries, bakeries. We believe it was off-season farmers who mostly made the pyramids. You've probably at least once in your lifetime seen a documentary about the exactness of it all. And really what's going on here is that it is a theocracy. The religion, and the leader of the religion and the leader of the government are one and the same. That's what a theocracy is. And they believed that if they made these, people did, if they made these mountains and put the pharaoh's body inside, then the pharaoh would have life everlasting. And also they would, because they helped in the reinforcing that he was immortal. So there you have it. All of them have been robbed, all of the pyramids. Although in scanners, you guys looked at 10 minutes of that, I think they're trying to find some stuff in one of them. Also, another thing that we don't realize is that there was it was a pyramid complex. And there was a gateway, and there was a temple at the banks of the Nile, on which they prepared the body and all that other stuff. So we're just looking at, of course, the largest of the buildings, but there was more than what you're seeing currently. Now, the other thing I want to mention is in the middle pyramid, you can still see the limestone cap on it. And that used to be the exterior of all these. And so I always say, you could go in that time period, it was so smooth and the limestone was so carefully put on it that you could take a burlap bag and go to the top. Although I don't know how you would go to the top, because there's no sort of, anyways, let's say you went to the top, you had a special magical Egyptian helicopter. And you could go all the way down to the end and kill yourself probably, because your velocity, that'd be a good physics problem. You're on a burlap bag, and you go all the way down to the bottom because it's all smooth, it's all capstone. Now, what happened to the capstones of the other pyramids and the one in the middle? Well, this whole idea of historic preservation was not an idea that really came about until late 19th century, early 20th century. And so what they would do is they would take the limestone, it's cut, it looks nice, and put it onto other buildings. All right, that's enough about the pyramids. We could talk about that all day. Okay, and then here shows the temple complex, and down below you can kind of see the Sphinx there. Yeah, down in the middle one, that's connected to the middle pyramid. Okay. All right, talking about idealized, here we go. So this is Oh, King Menkara and Queen and his queen. It's Old Kingdom. Oh, yes. So the pyramids are from the Old Kingdom. And you could have a little joke there. How old are the pyramids? They're very old because they come from the Old Kingdom. That's not really a joke. That's more just like a saying. Anyways, okay. So notice the king, the pharaoh, looks pretty darn solid. He's got a good workout body. Now, this whole idea of having your fist clenched and to the side and one foot forward will influence Greek sculpture, which I think we're going to talk about on Monday. And then you can see her idealized body through the thin dress she's wearing. And in reality, it's not a sculpture in the round. If you look behind this, I wish I had a photo. That's stupid. I don't. It's flat. It's not all done in the round. Okay, so there you go. Let's keep going. Okay, back to Iraq. And what happens basically is that the Sumerians are the first, right, of the River Valley kingdoms, and then every 30 to 100 years, I'm just guessing on the time frame, somebody else comes in and starts to dominate. So it's the Sumerians first, and then it is the Babylonians, who I guess will the Babylonians be more famous than the Sumerians? Probably. Anyways, the Babylonians were ruled over by Hammurabi, and this is another stele, and it has Hammurabi's code on it, which is the first time in which a civilization put down its laws so that everybody could see them. And of course, this is a pre-Jesus thing, so it's eye for an eye. And Hammurabi is giving an offering up top of the stele to the Babylonian god. Okay, now we're in the New Kingdom, and one way to sort of differentiate it from the Old Kingdom is they finally just stopped making the man-made mountains, the pyramids. So, I mean, you can imagine somebody just, put down their shovel or whatever and just said, this is ridiculous. We're not doing this anymore. So the major architectural structures, that would make an interesting movie. So the main structures in the New Kingdom are temples. And that's what we have here. This is the Temple of Amun-Re with the hypostyle hall. Boom. If you remember the first or second Mummy movie, the little boy is going around this temple. So a hypostyle hall is essentially a hall with a lot of different supporting columns. And there's this new thing that's invented. It's called a clerestory, which is a level of the temple that has windows so lights can come through it. The clerestory will become important for us for Roman temples, and then later on, believe it or not, Gothic architecture in France, cathedrals. So it all starts with these temples. And let's throw in a female pharaoh, very interesting individual in history, Hatshepsut. And this is her mortuary temple. So instead of, building again a pyramid, her remains are put inside an actual natural mountain. And she's a very powerful individual. What's interesting is sometimes she's shown with a fake beard. That's been studied. I have a book on it actually, where I have a book on her. Okay, so there you go. And then this is an image of Akhenaten. Oh boy, do I have it? Yes. Okay, so hold on a second. So this is Akhenaten, and then here is the very famous. It's essentially kind of a tile. And Akhenaten is fascinating. He decides to make the Egyptian religion monotheistic. Before that time, it was polytheistic, of many gods, of which you guys are probably all aware from grade school. And he moves the capital of Egypt to a particular town, or he creates the town. And the reason why you can tell it's Akhenaten is because he does not have the artist idealize his figures. So you can see on the left, he's got his little tummy there. And Akhenaten is known as Tutankhamun's dad. But once Akhenaten, also you're going to have spindly arms and kind of a protruding chin for anybody's likeness done during the Akhenaten period. So you worship a sun god, as you can see the sun in the middle there. But once Akhenaten dies, they abandon the capital. They ruin a lot of the art of Akhenaten and go back to a polytheistic religion. And then here's Tutankhamun. I was just reading a little bit more about Howard Carter coming into the tomb and how many textiles were in it, because I'm reading this book on textiles. Which, of course, didn't really interest Howard Carter that much. Tutankhamun came to the Science Museum in Minnesota. I'm very ashamed to say that I never went to see it. Of course, it was a huge thing in the 70s. The Bangles, a famous all-female band, wrote a tune, Walk Like an Egyptian. Steve Martin, a comedian, had a song about King Tut. And here's an interesting question. Will we ever, in the next 50 years, will I still be alive? I guess I'm not going to be alive. I'll be over 100 if it's 50 years. Let's say in the next 30 years, will they find a burial of a pharaoh that has not been robbed? I'm going to say yes. I'm kind of optimistic. It could happen. Now there is, you guys know I like Egyptian ancient documentaries. There was a documentary that's fairly convincing that actually the gold sarcophagus is of a woman. And was not for Tutankhamun, because Tutankhamun died so fast and so young that they already hadn't created one for him. And in that, what was it called? Ultimate Tut? I think it was The Secrets of the Dead. In that documentary, they talked about the fact that they kind of think he fell off a chariot, an Egyptian chariot, and was run over. That's how he died. So there you go. You heard it from me first. All right, let's keep going. All right, and then this is on papyrus, which is always really interesting and fun. It's showing you that Egyptian style with the legs profile, the torso, frontal, shoulders profile, and then the head is actually the shoulders are frontal and the head is profile. I think you'd be a good tennis player if you were doing that. And this is the Book of the Dead. There's a lot. When I saw that cat history video, the Egyptians were breeding cats like crazy, and then they were mummifying them because they believed it would, help them in the afterlife. And it's really an interesting point in cat development, evolution, what the Egyptians were doing with them. And there's been a couple of recent exhibitions on pet mummies. And then last but not least, let's go back to Iraq and the River Valley Kingdoms and look at something from the next culture that comes up after the Babylonians, and that is the Assyrians. I always like their stuff. They really got great relief sculptures, and they also have these huge man bull figures. And what's interesting about it is, do you see there's 5 legs on the one on the left? And that's because when they looked at it from the side, they wanted to believe there was 4 legs. They couldn't just believe it was there. And then there's there's kind of an extra one. If you look at it from the front, you see 2 legs. It's called object permanence. Little babies don't understand it. Like if you have a ball and then you put it under a table, they start to cry. So maybe the Assyrians were, working with issues with regards to object permanence. And so that's that. Oh, 34 minutes. That's not bad. On a Friday, 34 minutes. Come on, guys. You can do it. Yeah, there we go. So next up, I believe we're going to head towards the Greeks on Monday. I hope you enjoyed this look at early Near Eastern and Egyptian art.